The old man sat by the window, the faded photograph clutched in his trembling hand. Outside, the city hummed a familiar, distant tune, a symphony of lives lived and choices. But inside him, time spun backward. Not gently, but with the sudden, sharp clarity of a forgotten melody. He looked at the youthful face smiling back from the yellowed print, a face brimming with fierce ambition and untamed joy. That was him, once. A lifetime ago. But what had truly become of that boy? The question, as always, hung heavy, unanswered. Elias Thorne, now 72, had long since traded the vibrant hues of his youth for a palette of muted grays. His apartment, meticulously organized, reflected a life dedicated to order, to predictability. Every book on the shelf, every framed landscape print, spoke of a man who had built walls around himself, not to keep others out, but perhaps to keep something within from escaping. He ran a gnarled thumb over the photograph, tracing the outline of a woman's hand resting lightly on his younger self's shoulder. A ghost of a touch. Her name was Clara. Always Clara. He remembered the day he'd taken that photo. It was a crisp autumn afternoon, leaves aflame with color, a perfect backdrop to the bustling energy of the theater district. He'd just received his acceptance letter to the prestigious Conservatory of Music, a letter that felt like a key to a world he'd only dared to dream of. Clara, his Clara, had insisted on capturing the moment. Her eyes, even in the faded image, sparkled with an infectious belief in him, a belief he'd somehow managed to lose along the way. Elias, she'd said, her voice a soft bell in his memory. You're going to compose symphonies that will echo through time. He had believed her. He truly had. But then the whispers began. Not from Clara, never from Clara, but from the periphery. His father, a stern man of logic and ledger, had called it a fanciful indulgence. His mother, ever practical, had worried about financial stability. The world, it seemed, had a different score in mind. Music is a hobby, Elias, his father had stated, his words like cold steel. A lawyer, now that is a profession. A life of security. The word security had always held a hypnotic power over Elias, a promise of steadfastness in a world that felt increasingly chaotic. He remembered the internal battle, a silent war waged within his own soul, the soaring melodies that composed themselves in his mind, the intricate harmonies that danced just beyond his grasp, pitted against the reassuring solidity of a legal career. Clara, sensing his turmoil, had held his hand tighter. "Follow your heart, Elias," she'd whispered one evening, her gaze unwavering. The heart knows truths, the mind often, but the weight of expectation, the allure of a path laid out, felt almost insurmountable. Could he truly defy everyone, including the part of himself that craved that elusive security? The decision, when it finally came, wasn't a thunderclap, but a slow, agonizing surrender. He declined the conservatory's offer, opting instead for a pre-law program at a respectable, if uninspiring, university. He told himself it was temporary, a detour. He'd get his degree, build a solid foundation, and then he'd return to his music. But that then never came. Life, as it often does, began to fill the void. Law school was demanding, marriage to Clara followed shortly after. Children came, and suddenly, the soaring symphonies were replaced by the rhythmic ticking of a clock, marking deadlines, appointments, and mortgage. Clara, bless her patient soul, never reproached him. She'd quietly bought him a new piano, a beautiful grand. Even when their finances were tight, she'd encouraged him to play, to compose, to rekindle the flame. But the flame, once a roaring bonfire, had dwindled to a flicker. The creative spark, once so vibrant, felt buried under layers of briefs, court cases, and the relentless demands of a successful legal career. He had achieved the security his father had so adamantly pushed for: a sprawling house, 2 bright children, a comfortable retirement fund. Yet, a quiet ache persisted, a hollow space where the music should have been. He remembered a particular evening years later when his daughter, Sarah, then a curious teenager, had found his old composition notebooks, yellowed pages filled with intricate musical notations, some incomplete, others mere fragments of ideas. "Dad," she'd asked, her brow furrowed, "these are incredible. Why did you stop?" He'd mumbled something vague about priorities and responsibilities, a well-rehearsed excuse that felt like a lie even to his own ears. Sarah, with the piercing insight of youth, had simply looked at him, a silent question in her eyes that he couldn't quite answer. The shame of it still pricked him. Clara had understood, though. She always did. Her love was a quiet, steady presence, a constant reminder of the what-if. One day, while he was buried in paperwork, she'd played one of his unfinished pieces on the piano, a haunting melody that had once been destined for a grand symphony. He'd looked up, startled, the music filling the room, echoing the yearning he'd suppressed for so long. She simply smiled, a soft, melancholic smile, and continued to play. It was her gentle way of asking, "Is there still time?" He'd pushed the thought away, too afraid to confront the answer. The years had flown by, a blur of accomplishments and quiet regrets. He'd become a respected lawyer, known for his meticulous attention to detail and his unwavering dedication to his clients. He'd provided well for his family, seen his children off to college, and watched them build their own lives. He'd built a life of security, exactly as he'd been told to. But as he sat there, the photograph in his hand, he realized the cost. The security had come at the expense of his soul's deepest. The man in the picture, full of musical dream, had been slowly, subtly erased. Clara had passed away 5 years ago, leaving a gaping hole in his meticulously structured world. Her absence was a constant, quiet hum, like a sustained note in a minor key. He missed her unwavering belief, her gentle challenges, her silent understanding. He missed the way she'd look at him sometimes, as if seeing the younger, musical Elias still hidden beneath the layers of his lawyerly persona. Her death had been a catalyst, a jarring chord that had finally forced him to confront the silent symphony of his own unlived life. He remembered standing by her grave, the cold earth a stark contrast to the warmth she'd brought into his life. His children, Sarah and Michael, stood beside him, their faces etched with grief. He'd felt a profound sense of loneliness then, not just for Clara, but for the man he could have been, the man she had loved and believed. It was a loneliness that stemmed from a deeper regret, a recognition that he had chosen a path of comfort over a path of passion, and in doing so, had lost a piece of himself that even Clara couldn't fully restore. His retirement, a few years after Clara's passing, had been less a celebration and more a quiet retreat. The busy hum of the law firm, once his sanctuary, now felt like an empty echo. He had all the time in the world, and yet he felt adrift. The grand piano Clara had bought him sat in the corner of his living room, a silent monument to a dream deferred. Dust collected on its polished surface, a metaphor for the dreams that had gathered dust in his heart. He'd tried to play a few times, but his fingers felt stiff, uncooperative. The melodies, once so clear, now seemed fragmented, elusive. One afternoon, sorting through Clara's belongings, he found a small, leather-bound journal. It was her diary filled with her elegant handwriting. He hesitated, feeling like an intruder, but a desperate curiosity compelled him. He flipped through the pages, his eyes landing on an entry from their shortly after he'd decided against the conservatory. "Elias chose security today," she had written, the words flowing with a quiet sorrow. "My heart aches for the music he carries within him. I pray he finds his way back to it before it's too late. His soul needs to sing." The words hit him with the force of a physical blow. Her unwavering faith, her understanding of his deepest self. Even when he had failed to understand it himself, he had built a life on a foundation of what if and should have. And now, in the twilight of his years, the full weight of those choices pressed down on him. The security he had chased had become a gilded cage, trapping the vibrant spirit he once possessed. He closed the journal, his vision blurring. He walked to the piano, his steps heavy. He lifted the lid, revealing the ivory key gleaming faintly in the afternoon light. He placed his hands on them, tentatively at first, then with a growing certainty. He didn't know what he would play, or if he even remembered how. But as his fingers brushed the keys, a single, tentative note emerged, a fragile sound that seemed to hang in the air, a question mark. He spent the next few months in a quiet, solitary pursuit. He dusted off his old composition notebooks, his eyes tracing the familiar lines and symbols. He started with simple exercises, his fingers slowly regaining their agility. He listened to old recordings, re-immersing himself in the world of classical music, a world he had once been so close to entering. It was a painful process, filled with frustration and moments of despair. He often felt the ghost of his younger self looking over his shoulder, a silent observer of his struggle. "Is this enough?" the ghost seemed to ask. "Is this too late?" He began to compose again, not with the fiery passion of youth, but with a quiet, determined resolve. The melodies that emerged were different now, imbued with the wisdom of a life lived, the sorrow of regrets, and the faint, hopeful glimmer of redemption. He wasn't aiming for grand symphonies anymore. He was simply trying to tell his story, to give voice to the music that had been silenced for so long. One day, his daughter Sarah visited. She found him at the piano, lost in a melody he was slowly crafting. He hadn't told her about his renewed efforts, a quiet secret he'd kept to himself. She stood in the doorway, her expression a mix of surprise and something else, something akin to wonder. When he finally finished, the last note fading into the silence, she walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder, just as Clara had done in that faded photograph. "Dad," she said, her voice soft, "that was beautiful. I haven't heard you play like that in years." He looked at her, his eyes filled with a lifetime of unspoken words. "I'm trying, Sarah," he admitted, his voice raspy with emotion. "I'm trying to find my way back." She sat beside him on the piano bench, her presence a comforting warmth. "It's never too late, Dad," she said, her belief echoing Clara's. Never. The journey was far from over. Elias knew that. He wouldn't become the virtuoso he once dreamed of, nor would he compose the grand symphonies that would echo through time, but he was playing again. He was composing again. He was finally giving voice to the music within him, a melody of regret, yes, but also of quiet perseverance. The security he had chosen had given him a stable life, but the music, the true music, was giving him something more profound, a sense of wholeness, a whisper of peace. He still looked at the photograph of his younger self and Clara. The question still lingered, what if I had done things differently? But now, alongside the regret, there was a new understanding. The past couldn't be rewritten, but the present and the future still held possibilities. He was an old man, yes, but the music, once buried, was slowly, tentatively, beginning to bloom. He might not have lived the life he dreamed of, but he was finally, truly living. And perhaps that was enough. If you've ever felt the quiet ache of a dream deferred, if you've wondered what path your life might have taken, or if you've ever asked yourself, is there still time? Then you understand the profound journey Elias has embarked upon. His story, like so many others, reminds us that the choices we make or fail to make can echo through a lifetime. But it also reminds us that even when the road seems long and the years are many, the possibility of rediscovery, of redemption, and of finally hearing the music within is always there. Don't let your story remain untold. Subscribe to Pure Emotion, Life After 50, and activate the notification bell to hear more stories of lives lived, lessons learned, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The camera pans slowly from Elias and Sarah on the piano bench to the framed photograph on the mantelpiece. A younger Elias, vibrant and hopeful, beside a luminous Clara. The image shimmers, a portal to a past that shaped, but no longer defined, his present. The music, a delicate, melancholic melody, swells slightly, then fades to a gentle hum. Narrator Vio Ilias's journey, while deeply personal, resonates with a universal truth, the profound impact of deferred dream. It's a silent epidemic, this quiet capitulation to practicality, this slow surrender to the perceived dictates of responsibility. How many vibrant artists, passionate scientists, intrepid explorers, or dedicated humanitarians have been lost to the relentless currents of what if? The scene shifts. We see a montage of individuals in their 50s and 60s, each engaged in mundane activity. A woman filing papers in a sterile office, a man meticulously arranging items on a grocery store shelf, another staring blankly at a television screen. Their faces, though lined with experience, betray a subtle, almost imperceptible hollowness. Narrator Vio, consider Eleanor, a woman who, in her youth, dreamed of being an archaeologist, unearthing ancient secrets in sun-drenched lands. Instead, she chose a stable career in accounting, a life of ledgers and predictable numbers. Or Robert, whose hands yearn to sculpt, to coax form from clay, but who spent 40 years in a factory, his creativity confined to the precise movements of an assembly. Their stories, like Ilias's, are not tales of failure, but of unlived potential, of paths not taken. The montage continues, interspersing these scenes with glimpses of Elias at the piano, his fingers now moving with a newfound confidence, occasionally faltering, but always returning to the melody. Sarah watches him, a soft smile on her face. Narrator VO. The insidious nature of deferred dreams lies in their gradual erosion. It's rarely a dramatic renunciation, but rather a series of small, seemingly logical choices that, over time, steer us further and further from our true north. We convince ourselves it's for the best, for security, for family, for societal expectation. And often, these justifications are valid. But in the quiet hours, when the world outside falls silent, the ghost of what might have been whispers. The camera focuses on Elias's hands as they glide over the keys. A close-up revealing the subtle tremors that age has brought, yet also the muscle memory, the ingrained passion that refuses to be extinguished. Narrator VO. Elias's revelation wasn't a sudden epiphany. It was a slow dawning, spurred by the quiet wisdom of his daughter. This often happens. It's in the innocent, unburdened perspectives of children, or the gentle nudges of loved ones, that we sometimes find the courage to confront the narratives we've constructed for ourselves. Sarah, with her simple, unwavering belief, held up a mirror to her grandfather, reflecting back the artist he had always been, even when he couldn't see it himself. The scene shifts to a flashback. A younger Elias, perhaps in his late 20s, sits at a grand piano in a dimly lit, elegant concert hall. He's impeccably dressed, his face alight with passion as he performs a complex classical. The camera captures the intensity in his eyes, the fluidity of his movement. The music is powerful, captivating. Narrator VO. For Elias, the choice was stark. The demanding, uncertain path of a concert pianist, or the stable, respectable career in law. The siren song of music was potent, but the pragmatic voice of his father, the societal pressures, and perhaps a lingering self-doubt proved stronger. He chose the legal brief over the score, the predictable courtroom over the ethereal symphony. The flashback dissolves, returning to the present. Elias is still at the piano, but now he's composing. He hums softly, then plays a few tentative notes, scribbling them down on a sheet of music paper filled with crossed-out lines and new ideas. The piece is raw, unfinished, but undeniably his. Narrator VO. But what if the dream isn't about becoming a world-renowned virtuoso or uncovering ancient civilizations? What if it's simpler, more intimate? The dream of learning a new language, of mastering a craft, of volunteering for a cause close to one's heart, of finally writing that novel that's been percolating for decades. These two are dreams that can be deferred, their postponement leaving an equally poignant void. An older woman meticulously painting a vibrant landscape on a small canvas. Her hands, though gnarled, move with precision and joy. A man engrossed in a language learning app on his tablet, repeating phrases with a determined furrow in his brow. A retired teacher, surrounded by children, reading animatedly from a picture book in a local library. A woman tending a flourishing community garden, her face beaming as she harvests vegetables. Narrator VO. The beauty of the second act, or perhaps the rediscovery act, is that it doesn't demand the same outcomes as the Elias isn't aiming for Carnegie Hall. Eleanor isn't digging for pharaohs. Robert isn't exhibiting in prestigious galleries. Their pursuits are no longer about external validation or grand achievements. They are about internal fulfillment, about reclaiming a part of themselves that was set aside. The camera returns to Elias. He pauses, looking at the sheet music. He seems to be struggling with a particular passage. Sarah, still beside him, gently places her hand on his arm. Sarah, what's wrong, Dad? Elias, it's not quite right. It doesn't capture the feeling. This part needs more yearning, but also a touch of hope. Sarah smiles, understanding. Sarah, maybe you just need to listen, really listen to what it's trying to tell you. Elias looks at her, then back at the music. He closes his eyes, takes a deep breath, and places his hands back on the key. He plays the passage again, this time with a subtle shift in dynamic, a lingering pause, a softer touch. The melody takes on a new resonance, a depth that was missing before. Sarah's smile widens. Narrator VO, this is the essence of it. Listening, not just to the external world, but to the inner voice that often gets drowned out by the clamor of daily life. The voice that whispers of passions, of forgotten talents, of a yearning for something more. For many, this listening only becomes possible when the demands of career and family begin to recede, when the relentless pace of youth gives way to the reflective pace of later life. The scene transitions to a support group meeting for pure emotion, life. After 50, a diverse group of older adults sits in a circle, sharing their experiences. Martha, 60s, retired teacher, vibrant for years. I told myself I was too old to learn Spanish, too busy, too silly. But then I saw this ad for pure emotion and something just clicked. My grandmother was from Spain, and I always regretted not being able to talk to her in her native tongue. Now, I'm planning a trip to Seville next year, and I can actually order tapas in Spanish. It's not about being fluent. It's about finally connecting with a part of my heritage, a part of myself. David, 70s, former engineer. Thoughtful. I spent my life building bridges, literal bridges. Solid, functional, necessary. But I always secretly wanted to build something beautiful. Something that wasn't bound by physics. I started taking pottery classes last year. My first few attempts looked like lopsided alien heads. I swear. He chuckled. Others laughed softly. But now I'm making bowls, vases, things that bring a quiet joy. It's a different kind of engineering, I guess. Engineering beauty. Narrator VO, the beauty of these shared experiences is the realization that you are not alone. The quiet ache of a dream deferred is a common human experience, transcending demographics and backgrounds. And in sharing, in witnessing others reclaim their narratives, the path forward becomes less daunting, more illuminated. The camera returns to Elias's living room, now bathed in the warm glow of late afternoon sun. He and Sarah are looking at a photo album. It's filled with old sepia-toned pictures. Sarah, who's this, Dad? She points to a picture of a young man, vibrant and intense, playing a violin. Elias, that's my best friend Leo. We went to music school together. He was a brilliant violinist. Far more naturally gifted than I was, actually. Sarah, what happened to him? Elias sighs, a familiar sadness touching his eyes. Elias, he kept playing. He struggled for years, played in small orchestras, taught lessons. It wasn't easy. We lost touch as my legal career took off. I heard he eventually became a respected music teacher in a small town. Never became a famous soloist, but he never stopped playing, never stopped teaching. He lived the life I was too afraid to live. This new detail adds another layer to Elias's regret, highlighting the path he could have taken, made visible through the choices of a peer. Narrator V. Sometimes, the ghost of a deferred dream isn't just about what we didn't do, but about what others did. Seeing a contemporary, a friend, or even a fictional character pursue the very path we abandoned can be a powerful catalyst. It can evoke envy, yes, but also a profound sense of what if, and ultimately, a renewed determination to not let the remaining years be defined by those past regrets. The camera lingers on Elias's face, a complex tapestry of emotions, regret, longing, but also a burgeoning sense of peace. Narrator VO, the question, is there still time? Is often a rhetorical one, laden with self-doubt. But the answer, as Elias and countless others are discovering, is almost always a resounding yes. Time is not a finite resource that runs out for dream. It's a continuous flow. And at any point along that flow, we have the capacity to redirect our course. Elias is now back at the piano, playing the piece he was composing. This time, the music flows seamlessly, each note imbued with the yearning and hope he spoke of earlier. Sarah listens, her eyes closed, a beatific expression on her face. Narrator VO, the music within us, the true music of our souls, doesn't diminish with age. It simply gets buried under layers of obligation, expectation, and fear. But it's always there, waiting to be unearthed, waiting to be given voice. And when it finally is, it's not just a melody, It's a symphony of a life reclaimed, a spirit reignited. The camera pulls back, showing Elias and Sarah, bathed in the golden light. The music swells, a powerful emotional crescendo, then softens into a gentle, hopeful melody. Narrator Vio Ilias's story is a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit. It is a reminder that the choices we make, or fail to make, can echo through a lifetime. But it also reminds us that even when the road seems long and the years are many, the possibility of rediscovery, of redemption, and of finally hearing the music within is always there. The screen fades to black, then the pure emotion, Life After 50 logo appears on screen, along with the call to action for subscribing and activating the notification bell. Narrator Vio, don't let your story remain untold. Subscribe to Pure Emotion, Life After 50 and activate the notification bell to hear more stories of lives lived, lessons learned, and the enduring power of the human spirit. Find your melody. Discover your rhythm. It's never too late. The final shot is a close-up of Ilias's hand, still on the piano key, a single, sustained note hanging in the air, full of resonance, quiet triumph.